push live yet, right? You want me up there then? So at 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 hit the North Tower.
On 9/11, I was actually in bed sleeping when it first happened. My wife woke me up. I had been working night shift that night and the night before, and my phone was ringing, and probably after the third or fourth time of it being called, I answered it, and it was my wife, and she had said, "Are you watching the news?" I said, "No, I wasn't," and she says, "You need to turn this on." So I turned it on and saw what was a life-changing moment for many, but especially for me. Not only worrying about my wife and my children and the community that I lived in, but also the community that I was sworn to protect and serve, and wondering how this was going to not only impact our country, but close to home, our own community. So looking back at it now, it seems like it was a long time ago, but it's still very fresh in my mind and very fresh in the minds of all of the police officers here at the Marshfield Police Department. We work tirelessly to make sure that our community is safe and secure and confident that they are protected by our law enforcement officers. And despite never being able to predict behaviors such as this, when we're attacked by individuals who have nothing but terror and crisis-causing events in mind, you can rest assured that the Marshfield Police Department will stop at nothing to keep you safe.
Yeah, on the morning of September 11th of 2001, did I say that right? September 11th. Cut that part. Anyways, I had worked the night before. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was in bed sleeping. At that time, I think it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, my wife came into the bedroom and said, "We're being attacked. I think you need to get up." So I got up and I started watching the TV, and one of the towers had already come down. And the interesting part about it was I obviously didn't go back to sleep that day with a lot of concerns everybody had, but when I came in to work Tuesday night, it was almost a surreal setting because that was when everybody in town was trying to get gasoline. So one of the things I had to do was stop traffic up by Quick Trip on North Central Avenue so a tanker could get in. Well, then my wife had called me and said, "Should I go and get some gasoline?" And I said, "Yeah, I think you should, so go to one of the gas stations on the outskirts of town and get it." So after about an hour wait, she was able to get it. And another very memorable part is I recall sitting in my squad car as President Bush came on at that time and started talking about the attack and who they suspected. And I think looking back, it was just very surreal and it was very scary to have been attacked on our own soil. And we had not seen anything like that since Pearl Harbor. So that's my recollection of that day.
Brandon Bollendorfer. September 11th, I was a senior in high school. I remember that morning very well. I just walked into my world history class, and I was standing there, and I had just seen the towers. Every morning at World History, we'd watch current events on the news with our teacher. And that morning, I saw the plane hit the first tower, and being a senior in high school, I, just shocked. I was looking at the dramatic footage that was on TV, and my teacher said, he goes, "We're going to war." And I'll never forget that statement. As the day unfolded, I can remember every single minute of my morning that day and how it all unfolded. And just constantly, when I look back at 9/11, what really comes to mind is I think of how unified our country was, how every person was a brother and a sister and a neighbor to each other. And looking back at 9/11 every year when I see this day, that's one thing that comes back to my mind is the connectiveness of all of us as humans, all of us as Americans, all of us as citizens here. 9/11 was a tragic day, but our country rose up that day, and I'm proud to be an American.
This time. The time? 42. Stay for that. 2:45. United Airlines flight 177.
we take a step that way.
9/11, I was actually in second grade. I remember teachers walking in and talking about it, and I didn't really know what was going on, but I knew it was a pretty big deal. I remember going home and seeing my mother cry on the couch, my father coming home early from work. And as the years went on, we talked about it more and more every year, and I realized how big of an impact it makes on our country, and even the small communities that we live in here. It did play a large role in why I got into this field. Hopefully you can cut out the end there where I just stopped.
What I remember about 9/11, I was in my early 20s. Remember I was working and I heard it come out over the radio that the United States was under attack. I think it's the first time in my adult life that a news event had made me cry. I called my dad, and he and I had talked about it for a little bit. And I called my brother, and we talked about it. And I think because of what happened on that day, it definitely helped. It took a part in shaping my direction and my career choice to be in law enforcement. I felt cheated. I felt like the United States had been taken advantage of, and I felt that it was kind of one of the defining moments in my adult life that I felt like I needed to take a stand and give back. So it was part of the reason why I went into law enforcement. It was a tragic day, and it's a day I'll never forget.
We're going to take a quick tour of the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department. Today is Monday, September 11th. We have an open house today honoring and remembering those that were killed, civilians and responders, 9/11/2001. So here we go. So right here is the lobby of the fire station. In the station, we have put a lot of history into the station. We have pictures of former members, old apparatus, anything that you can think of that we have in our history, we have here. We have the museum. The museum, that wagon is actually the wagon that was used way back in the day. There's a lot of artifacts that are in the museum that were either donated back to the department or are items that we had here. A lot of neat things in there. The bricks that that wagon is sitting on were collected when Central Avenue and the adjoining streets were redone back in 2009 or so. Those were underneath the concrete, and those bricks are what this wagon would have ridden on, or did ride on, I should say, back in the day that was a frontline piece of equipment. So we can continue on. The first floor is all of our administrative offices. We have the secretary's office. My office as the chief is up here in the corner. Each of the other officers have an office down the hall. The shift commander, the deputy chief of fire prevention, and the deputy chief of EMS. Over here we have the inspector's office. The fire inspectors have a lot of material that they need to reference when they're doing code enforcement, when they're researching different things, and this office is really specifically for them. They work in conjunction with the deputy chief of prevention and make sure that all of our inspections are up to date, make sure that businesses are safe. We do everything that we can to make sure that the citizens are safe in the city of Marshfield. Down this hall, again, a lot of history within the organization. This is an actual ladder from an old ladder truck. It's actually this truck up here. Bob Colt, better known as Bruno, had this ladder in his garage, and when we moved in here, he donated it to us. Bob had been on the department for 30 years, and sadly he passed away a few years ago, but he was able to come in and look at the department, take pride in the department. We've got him actually hanging up on a couple of different pictures in the walls. And when we had his funeral, because he was so instrumental in a lot of the department history, we put his casket on that wagon, and the funeral procession was his wagon with 2 horses, I believe, up front. So, kind of going down. Again, a lot of history in the department.
had just dropped off my daughter in elementary school. Heard on the radio that a plane had hit one of the towers. Got home and turned on the news, saw what was happening. I was actually watching the news when the second plane hit, realized what was going on. A lot of thoughts going through my head at the time. Horror, all the people that were involved, watching the responders, anger, like a lot of people. From that point, just basically kind of feeling helplessness of wanting to be there and do something, which is, the reason why a lot of us got in this job to begin with. Thanks.
On 9/11, I was actually in Denver, Colorado. Just had pulled in that morning. We were over there to see some relatives of mine, and the news came on the radio, and she came out to our camper, told us what had happened, and being so far away from home and my departments and stuff like that, not knowing exactly what was going on in the country, it was pretty uneven. We ended up going to church that morning at hers. When we were done with that, the concern was, do we try to make our run home? Because they were talking of closing down the country and borders and stuff at the state lines. We decided to stay put. Then we decided that we were going to go to some of the memorials at that area. Being that it was a military type community, they had closed all of that stuff down. And later in the day, we had seen airplanes flying overhead, and we had been told that all airspace had been shut down. Being from Wisconsin and not a military-based community, we did not realize that they were actually flying military operations. And they were very busy flying military operations, probably more than commercial. So it was just the feeling of kind of helplessness, being in a community away from our community.
Where was I on 9/11 in 2001? I was a freshly appointed deputy chief of about a month. I was working that day. I remember going to the front desk and turning on the TV and watching it. And as everybody else has stated, you watch the second plane hit and you just thought it was a replay of the first one, and suddenly realized it wasn't. One of the big things that sticks out in my mind is people kept coming by the station, dropping flowers, bringing us food, which I thought was very odd because it was our disaster. It was, but it wasn't in Marshfield. It was just unusual the amount of support from the community on that day.
So what do you want me to say?
Just where you were and what your thoughts were on the day.
September 11th, 2001, I was driving from my parents' house to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh down Highway 41 South. I remember I had just hit the Butamore Bridge when the first plane had hit and they were announcing it on the local radio station. The rest of the day was just kind of surreal. I remember getting to class and everybody was just kind of milling around. Not sure if this was real or if it was a big hoax at that time. And I remember we were watching the news when the second plane came in and actually struck the second World Trade Center building. And at that point in my life, I was still pretty young, so I don't know. I realized that we weren't maybe as safe as we thought we would be. And a few years later, I ended up joining the armed services and joining the Army. That may have indirectly affected that choice. That's about it.
Thank you.
Howdy.
So what are you guys looking for?
We're just looking for your thoughts and what was going through your mind on that day.
Oh, you want me to leave now? September 11th, 2001, I was in the United States Marine Corps, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina Marine Corps base. I was in the service for just under 2 years at that time, and I don't exactly remember what I was doing, most likely on my way to work or having been there for a few hours already, but I remember our chief warrant officer coming out and letting us know that we had been attacked, and it was a very serious matter at that point. I don't remember the exact events of that day. We kind of went around business as usual, but shortly after that, the very next day, base was on lockdown, and it was very surreal at that point. A young Marine like myself, 20 years old, along with a bunch of other young men like that, we were pretty gung-ho at the time. I remember wanting a lot of payback, and I had friends. They were in Afghanistan very, very shortly thereafter on the first boat over there, so I had a lot of friends and blood, sweat, and tears invested into that. So I just remember that being a major moment in my life that really helped dedicate the next couple of years to what I had going on.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back. Kind of wrap up the tour here in the apparatus bay of the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department. We visited the truck. Next over on our apparatus is our squad. Our squad is a medium-duty rescue squad, primarily used for hazardous materials response and confined space response. Attached to the squad is a trailer, contains all of the hazardous materials response equipment that we may need. And then the last fire engine, which is actually a Quint again, that we have is engine 4. Engine 4 is our reserve, and actually I shouldn't say our last one up on the front line here. Engine 4 is our first out engine if we need, if we have multiple responses, multiple fires at the same time, or if it's a mutual aid call, we're going out to a township or something. This very well could be the one that would go. These two rigs are not staffed every day. These are usually going to be call-in staff or staff coming off of one of the primaries taking these rigs. It's kind of dependent upon the incident at hand. So as we go down, we can kind of take a look at our squad. We have a remembrance sticker of 9/11 up on the squad. We had that put on when we purchased it. Just another way that we can keep it in our minds and never forget what happened that day. We store the Marshfield Police Department tactical vehicle here. We're happy to do it for them. It's a short-term storage until they find a permanent home, but it gives them quick access to their vehicle if they need it in a secure facility. The station is always locked up. We have 2 foam trailers. I believe these 2 trailers, each trailer has 500 gallons of foam. These are primarily for the utility turbine plant, the big one out on Galvin or whatever that is, 13 out there now. And they don't have a suppression system built in, so if we would get a fire there, we would take these with us and pump into them and use the foam off of these for that suppression. They are also available to other townships and communities if they have a significant fire and they need large volumes of foam. We can take them. Haven't had to use it yet, which is nice. The least amount of time that we have to use it, the better. But it's there in case we need it. This is our 4th out ambulance. Currently we have 4 ambulances. Hopefully someday we can look at adding an additional ambulance. Our call volume continues to increase. I think this year we're already a couple hundred calls higher than last year. Of course, with increased call volume, the need for up-to-date equipment and additional equipment and even personnel is important. So those are things that we're working on for the future. This here is engine 3. Engine 3 is about a 1982. This is our reserve engine as well. This one is slated to be replaced next year, at least in our replacement schedule, but that could change, again, depending on budgets and limits and stuff. But that is our oldest rig right now is this one. This one also would go out to the townships if needed. If we get out a fire call in a area of the city where there are no hydrants, such as down by 29th Street on the south side, or up in the Manville area where there are no hydrants, this one would go. We have a drop tank on top where we could dump water in and have tenders from area departments come in, supply water, and then draft out and pump with this. So the need is there for this one yet. primarily because of the drop tank. But when we look at a new one in the future, we'll see what we get. Well, our first ambulance is back. It's nice. We have a couple of members back in the station. We had 3 calls out here a minute ago. So this here is what you can see is our gear rack. All of our fire gear is stored in here. Everybody has their own. Our tactical gear is stored in here. Hopefully we never need to use our rescue task force equipment, but if we do, it is there and ready to go. So let's go out this way. So we're in the center area. This is our map area. It's the center drop point, if you will, for the guys coming off the second floor. We have our fire pole, which surprisingly the majority of the guys do use. They enjoy going down. We have some that drop like rocks. That would be me. I go down, I don't slow down. And then we have guys who spin as they go down. They've practiced and gotten very good at coming down the pole. Upstairs we have the dorm rooms. Each firefighter has their own room, shares it with 2 other firefighters on the other shifts. Again, we have a lot of history upstairs. We have a day room, and that's where the firefighters can go relax at night and wind down in between calls. And then, of course, the kitchen is upstairs where they cook as some as a shift, some individual, but that's where they can kind of do that. So we're just back into the administrative area. Again, all the history on the walls. This here, we've only had 1 line of duty death in the city of Marshfield. And that was this gentleman here. That's Marv Stroman. Died fighting a fire.
September 11th, 2001. I remember it like it was not that long ago. I was working for the Marshfield Fire Department. I had just gotten done with my shift at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had gotten home. It was a long night on the ambulance. Basically sat down in the chair to catch some Z's. And my wife woke up. The first plane had hit the tower. She didn't know what it was, just that it was on the news. So I got up, started watching it. At that time, we really didn't know what was going on yet. But as I continued to watch, I remember seeing the images of the second plane and knew that this wasn't an accident. And for the rest of the morning, I just remember being glued to the TV at home. Ironically, I remember our TV in the kitchen is 13 inches, a smaller one, and we had a great big, 26 or 27 inch back in that time in the living room. And for whatever reason, I was so glued in on that TV that I didn't even go to the other room to turn on the bigger TV. And looking back on it now, that's just how much it caught my attention, how I couldn't move from that point. So pretty much the rest of the day I was glued to the TV and watching. So that's what I remember.
I was actually working in a different career field at the time. I was working for my parents. I was on a volunteer fire department, kind of debating if I wanted to do the career as a firefighter or not. And pretty much remember just coming in the house, my mom coming out of the shop and telling us what was going on. We came in and sat there the rest of the day kind of watching news footage and taking it all in. But it was something that it took to heart, and it was one of the main reasons that I came into take firefighting and EMS as a career. And ever since then, it's been an emotional day for everybody, including myself, and I kind of don't have much words to describe it. is one of the reasons I came in this field, and I don't have any regrets since that day.
We did everything that we could to keep the past members in our memories and remember them. This here is our 9/11 tribute. This is about a 4 to 5 foot piece of steel I-beam that came out of one of the towers. We are not exactly sure which tower, but this was donated to us by the World Trade Foundation, or whatever it was titled. Rail trucking went over to New York and actually put this on a flatbed and brought it back for us. The stories that the driver would tell us, people would look at it and go, it's a hunk of steel. What is it? And then he would tell them that it was from the towers, and they would just have globs of people come up and admire it and look at it and just kind of remember. Every year, citizens donate flowers. We have that picture going all the time. So this is our tribute. We could have put that outside, but I actually think it's better inside, only because it's more protected, and we can put out the niceties that go along with it. All right. The next room over is just our EMS workroom. Guys can go in and do their EMS reports, or check their email or stuff like that. Okay, let's move the apparatus floor. We'll check the big trucks out. Folks want to walk around, you are more than happy to do whatever you want. We're going to take a quick tour of the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department. Today is Monday, September 11th. We have an open house today honoring and remembering those that were killed, civilians and responders, 9/11/2001. So here we go. So right here is the lobby of the fire station. In the station, we have put a lot of history into the station. We have pictures of former members, old apparatus, anything that you can think of that we have in our history, we have here. We have the museum. The museum, that wagon is actually the wagon that was used way back in the day. There's a lot of artifacts that are in the museum that were either donated back to the department or are items that we had here. A lot of neat things in there. The bricks that that wagon is sitting on were collected when Central Avenue and the adjoining streets were redone back in 2009 or so. Those were underneath the concrete, and those bricks are what this wagon would have ridden on, or did ride on, I should say, back in the day that was a frontline piece of equipment. So we can continue on. The first floor is all of our administrative offices. We have the secretary's office, my office as the chief is up here in the corner. Each of the other officers have an office down the hall. The shift commander, the deputy chief of fire prevention, and the deputy chief BMS. Over here we have the inspector's office. The fire inspectors have a lot of material that they need to reference when they're doing code enforcement, when they're researching different things, and this office is really specifically for them. They work in conjunction with the deputy chief of prevention and make sure that all of our inspections are up to date, make sure that businesses are safe. We do everything that we can to make sure that the citizens are safe in the city of Marshfield. Down this hall, again, a lot of history within the organization. This is an actual ladder from an old ladder truck. It's actually this truck up here. Bob Colt, better known as Bruno, had this ladder in his garage, and when we moved in here, he donated it to us. Bob had been on the department for 30 years, and sadly he passed away a few years ago, but he was able to come in and look at the department, take pride in the department. We've got him actually hanging up on a couple of different pictures in the walls. And when we had his funeral, because he was so instrumental in a lot of the department history, we put his casket on that wagon, and the funeral procession was his wagon with 2 horses, I believe, up front. So, kind of going down. Again, a lot of history in the department. We did everything that we could to keep the past members in our memories and remember them. This here is our 9/11 tribute. This is about a 4 to 5 foot piece of steel I-beam that came out of one of the towers. We are not exactly sure which tower, but this was donated to us by the World Trade Foundation, or whatever it was titled. Rail trucking went over to New York and actually put this on a flatbed and brought it back for us. And the stories that the driver would tell us, people would look at it and go, it's a hunk of steel. What is it? And then he would tell them that it was from the towers, and they would just have globs of people come up and admire it and look at it and just kind of remember. Every year, citizens donate flowers. We have that picture going all the time. So this is our tribute. We could have put that outside, but I actually think it's better inside, only because it's more protected and we can put out the niceties that go along with it. All right. The next room over is just our EMS workroom. Guys can go in and do their EMS reports or check their email or stuff like that. Okay, let's move the apparatus floor. We'll check the big trucks out. And if you folks want to walk around, you are more than happy to do whatever you want, just kind of, well, within reason. Kind of walk around, get a feel. So you are now in the ambulance bay. You'll notice there are no ambulances in here. Both of them are out on calls right now. We have 2 more ambulances on the backside of the station, but these ambulances, one was out on an intercept and one was out on a local resident that fell. But they should be coming back soon. As we go through, we have a lot of stuff, and I hate to use the word stuff, but we have a lot of stuff that we use fairly routinely. Our Rescue Randy, our mannequin, our crews use to train with. About a 150-pound mannequin that we will put in a building, and the crews will go in, do a search and a rescue, drag this mannequin out, and practice their skills that way. So as we go through here, we have quite a few pieces of apparatus. We have 4 engines, 1 ladder truck, and people are always curious. They always call these fire trucks. And fire trucks is a generic term, but technically this is an engine. Engines are the ones that pump the water to the hose, put the fire out. Trucks are the ones that have the ladders on top that do the rescues. Okay. What you see there, that engine with the ladder, is termed a quint, meaning that it's dual purpose. Quints do well for us here. Because we are, we do it all. We cross-staff everything. If you go to a larger city, they have engine companies, they have truck companies. The engine companies fight the fire, use the hose. The truck companies cut the holes in the roof, they do the search, they don't touch the hose. We have to do everything here, so the quints actually work very well for us here. So on a fire response, these 2 engines and the big ladder truck that we'll go to next are our first line rigs. This is our newest engine, engine 1. It's been here a couple of years now. And then that ladder truck is about 107 feet from ground to tip, fully extended. This ladder truck is being replaced this year. This one has been in the department since '92 or so, and it's not a independent rig, meaning that if we have a fire and we have to use the platform for fire suppression, we have to dedicate an engine to pump into it because this does not have a pump. So it's not very it's not a logical choice for us to continue to use this because it takes extra rigs and extra personnel. Oh, 1 more minute. Off we go. We got to ring the bell. We're going to take a quick tour of the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department.